Come on, folks. Another Wednesday is going by, which means another episode of AEW to review. As well as a little bit of NXT. I'll just talk about NXT briefly. What happened at NXT? First of all, Finn Balor came out. I don't think it's clear whether he's going to give his title up or something like that. But he was attacked by the Kings of Wrestling. It looks like it's going to be them versus Undisputed Cucks at War Games. It should be awesome to see just because Pat McAfee, you know what I'm saying? That's about the only reason to watch this match. I guess only Lorcan and Danny Burch are cool. Pete Dunne, not so much. It is what it is, right? There was like 15 women's matches on this. And now the new thing for WWE, apparently, is when they have a match that even remotely seems like a big deal, they overhype it. You know what I'm saying? This started when Randy Orton and Edge wrestled at WrestleMania, or was it after WrestleMania? After WrestleMania, where they had the greatest match in history. You know, they just built it. It was a pretty good match. It was one of the best matches ever, no doubt about it. But like, now I've noticed every time I watch Raw, they just say something like, "Oh, it's gonna be Randy Orton versus Drew McIntyre for the 15th time." You know, they're like, "This is a match that could main event WrestleMania," and I'm like, "Dude, not every match can main event WrestleMania. It is what it is, though, right?" So they did this again. They had Io Shirai versus Ria Ripley, who I had completely forgotten about. Let's be honest, right? And Tom Mitchell, whatever his name is, that guy, he was like, "This is a match that could main event an NXT Takeover," and I'm like, first of all, there's something to be proud of. About that. That's like saying, this is a match that could main event like Texas Southwest Wrestling. You know what I'm saying? Who gives a fuck, right? The match was whatever. Io Shirai won. The finish was pretty cool because like Rhea Ripley crawled into the ring to beat the count, and as she was still on the ground, she got hit with a moonsault, which I thought was kind of cool. You know what I mean? Beyond that, we had more Dakota Kai nonsense. An interesting thing in NXT is that the Chinese wrestlers, they have some storyline with like some guy, they're like all scared of him or some shit. I wonder what that's gonna lead to. Probably nothing. But it is what it is, you know? So, yeah, it wasn't that great. NXT wasn't that great. I mean, it's really hard to get behind a show where the main guy is Finn Balor. And it's like, if you're going to take the show seriously, I don't hate this Leon Ruff kid who's now the new North American champion. I don't hate him. But let's call it like it is. I mean, like, this guy would never become, like, Intercontinental Champion immediately on Raw or on SmackDown, right? This is something that you can do in NXT because there's a lot of things you can do in NXT because it's a jobber show, motherfuckers. It's a jobber fest. So anyways, that's all I got to say about NXT. Let's move on to A-Dub up in this. You know what I'm saying? So first up, we had the Young Bucks versus Top Flight. To introduce Top Flight to us, they had a little vignette, right, where the Top Flight guys, I think they're brothers, right? They're these two generic jobbers, right? They're like, we grew up watching the Young Bucks and Motor City Machine Guns. No, you didn't, bitch. You grew up watching the Hardy Boys like everybody else. Although they might be like 19 or something, so I guess like it is what it is. Yeah, they're young. So maybe they did grow up watching the Young Bucks, but I mean the amount of self-congratulation that the Young Bucks give themselves is preposterous. You know what I mean? Like now they want to like transition to being like role models. You know what I'm saying? 2 years ago they were wrestling the Hardy Boys, where they were the ones that were influenced by the Hardy Boys. Clearly, it is what it is. Good for them. Top Flight was obviously going to lose. We never seen this tag team on TV. They're not going to lose. They're not going to beat the Young Bucks, who are presented now and always as the best tag team in the world and in AEW. Like, it's so weird hearing JR just continuously say these guys are the best tag team, even though they lost all the times that they had title shots. And now that they're tag team champions, the narrative continues, you know what I'm saying? As it should, like they're champions now. But the narrative continues. It's almost like, why do you need the titles, Who needs the titles in this company? All that matters is what JR and the neckbeards think of you, All that matters is what Dave Meltzer writes, right? That's kind of the problem here, Like, they keep emphasizing this, like, oh, the Young Bucks have been voted best tag team on Pro Wrestling Insider. Like, anybody gives a shit about that. Who cares? You know what I'm saying? It doesn't mean anything. It's a make-believe sport. You can't be the best at something in a make-believe sport. The only way you can be the best at something is if you draw money. The only metric that matters in wrestling is drawing power, cucks. Nothing else matters. It doesn't matter if you're like the best in-ring guy ever if you can't draw a dime. You know what I mean? That's why WWE is failing left and right. But we'll get to that in the next video, motherfucks. So anyways, that happened. It didn't really matter. Nobody really gave a damn about this match. I mean, it's exactly what you'd expect. It's a young tag team who, like works hard to get there and like is really athletic, right? Then we had Orange Cassidy versus Kip Sabian. The Orange Cassidy thing needs to end. It has run its course. I can't believe this is over still, I mean, maybe it's not, right? Maybe if they had the live audiences, by this time, people would have started booing him. Or maybe not. Who the fuck knows, right? They had Miro on commentary. Oh, my God. I don't want to hear Miro on commentary. First of all, the fact that they keep mentioning Twitch is embarrassing. It's cringy. Miro, he's a cool guy. I feel like he's someone that I would get along with in real life. But the problem I have with him is that he is pretending to be this like goofball, right? Like, which he might be in real life. He might be a goofball. But the whole like Putin agent gimmick worked wonders for him. It was better than this garbage where he's like, all he does is talk about video games. You know, like I'm trying to distance myself from video games in the world of wrestling because they're two separate worlds still. But for some reason, people want to combine the two all the time. You know, we'll get to that later. Another video for that too. But anyways, that happened. No one really gave a damn, right? John Moxley had a promo. He explained that Renee is pregnant. Like, who gives a fuck? He was saying like JR was like, oh, congratulations to Renee and John. Like, who cares, man? You know, like she's not even in the company, bruh. Yeah. So there you go. So that's what I had to say about that. They had a contract signing. Kenny Omega came to the ring, but John Moxley was injured backstage, and the whole idea was that like Kenny Omega was basically saying that like, you know, Moxley just is always injured, and he's right. He's not wrong about this. You know what I'm saying? Like one thing that you gotta give credit to Kenny Omega and people like Trent is that they keep wrestling every week. You know, like Kenny Omega was a big deal in Japan, right? He was a big deal, and he was pretty much wrestling only on pay-per-views. They don't have their own weekly show, as far as I know, right? So he was wrestling on pay-per-views, and now he's out here busting his ass, wrestling every week, so John Moxley can go and just like never defend any title that he has, you know? So Kenny Omega is right. I can't get past the fact that Kenny Omega's new entrance involves two girls with brooms. This is not cool. Like, it's not ironically cool. It's just stupid, right? That's what I gotta say about that. So that happened. No one really cared. You might have expected something from this, but you didn't get anything out of it. Then we had The Blade versus Pac. And instead of having Pac just kick this guy in the head 3 times and then put on the brutalizer and beat him, right? They actually had a prolonged match. Pac is actually interesting, or I should say he was interesting up until this match. Because the entire premise of Pac now, as far as I understood it, right, was that Pac was quarantined and he was isolated for 9 months. And in these 9 months, he lost his mind. And now that should be reflected in the way that he wrestles. He shouldn't be wrestling a technical match, doing moonsaults and shooting star presses. It should be kick to the head, forearm, 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 kick to the head while the guy is standing down, brutalizer, the end. That's what it should be, you know, especially against the Blade, who's basically a jobber, right? This was just done to set up the split between like the Eddie Kingston people and the Death Triangle or whatever, right? So now they tease like Pentagon hitting Phoenix with a chair. He didn't. He stole Mike next week. Who the hell knows? It was so cringy because Pentagon like pretended he was gonna swing, but it was so clear that he didn't swing, and he kind of hesitated afterwards, and it was like, oh god, you just completely missed your cue, bruh. You know what I'm saying? So there you have it. That happened. No one really cared. The match was all right. I'm not gonna lie, but no one really cared. Then we had Serena Deeb versus Thunder Rosa. I mean, I don't really have anything to say about this. Britt Baker came and interfered. I mean, nothing really mattered here, if I'm being honest. You know what I mean? So Serena Deeb wins. She's still the NWA Women's Champion. Like, no one cares about this title at all. You know, like they're here because their TV deal was like destroyed. Whatever, the YouTube deal was destroyed because that company was apparently full of like, you know, sexual deviants and molesters and shit like that. So it is what it is, right? The match wasn't that great. I didn't really enjoy it. Then we had Brian Cage and Ricky Starks finally being on TV. Now, I don't really like Ricky Starks. I've made that clear. But I like him more than I like Cody Rhodes and Darby Allin. You know, so they came out. The match was complete shit. I didn't enjoy it at all. Brian Cage should be out there, like, destroying people left and right. I don't think he'll ever recover from the fact that he was jobbed out to Tessa Blanchard. You know what I mean? That was something that, like, I don't even know how you can excuse that. That was just ridiculous, motherfuckers. So anyways, eventually, Darby Allin makes his way to the top turnbuckle. And he hits, what's it called? The drill claw from the top rope, kind of, right? I mean, it's not really a drill claw because it didn't, you know, a drill claw is like a suplex into the Michinoku pile driver. But he just hit like a Michinoku pile driver. That looked pretty cool, and he won the match. It was a decent match for what it was. It didn't really speak main event to me when 2 of the guys haven't been on TV. And then you have the Intercontinental Champion, basically, and Cookie Rhodes instead of John Moxley, who should be there every week, in my opinion. But that's neither here nor there. I predict that he's going to like drop that belt so he can go be with Renee. They really did present, in 2 weeks from now, like Winter is Coming, another nerd reference, right? They really presented this as like a big time event, as the biggest episode of Dynamite of all time. And like, I mean, I'm looking forward to it because I'm hoping that Kenny Omega finally wins the title, just so we can have a champion that's there every week. You know what I mean? Like, what's the whole thing about John Moxley? You know, he left WWE because people like Brock Lesnar were taking his spot more or less, right? Like people like Brock Lesnar were lazy. Brock Lesnar didn't want to put him over at all because why would he? I mean, look at Jon Moxley. Like, by the way, does anyone remember that match? Remember how that match was presented at WrestleMania a few years ago, right? Like the Shield people were in like pretty high impact matches, right? And one of those was Dean Ambrose versus Brock Lesnar, and the entire storyline of the match was like Booker T and Renee and Michael Cole just like pretty much arguing whether Jon Moxley had any chance in hell. I mean, sorry, Dean Ambrose had any chance in hell, right? Like everyone was like, he has zero chance. Like the match wasn't even presented as if it was going to be anything but a squash match. You know, Ricochet got a better build up to the match than Dean Ambrose did. You know, that was the downfall of Dean Ambrose. He started going downhill big time after that. I think deservedly so, in my opinion. He had just dropped the title like pretty recently, I think. So it was what it was. But that's how it should be booked. And then he gets mad at this. He's like, oh, I didn't get booked to be a champion or whatever, all this horseshit, right? And then, like, the implications are that he's mad at the part-timers like Goldberg and Brock Lesnar who do get booked as champions, and they don't work as hard as Moxley does, right? And then he comes to the indie fed, right? And he becomes Goldberg and Brock Lesnar. He comes every 3 weeks, right? Typically does, like, a promo or something, right? And has a match at a pay-per-view. He doesn't contribute at all. You know, the fact that he's champion is ridiculous. It is worse than Brock Lesnar being champion in Raw, right? The reason it's worse is very simple. Because at least Brock Lesnar is Brock Lesnar, right? Brock Lesnar can do that because, number one, now it's part of his character, kind of. And two, he's Brock Lesnar. The entire point of Brock Lesnar is he does what the hell he wants. What are you going to do about it? You know? Jon Moxley doesn't show up. Brock Lesnar shows up, F5, someone leaves. The end. He decisively beats jobbers like Ricochet, etc., etc. You know what I'm saying? After the match, Will Hobbs came to save Cody and Darby Allin. This was the most predictable heel turn of all time. The reason it was predictable, in my opinion, was because Will Hobbs has nothing going for him, right? The only way this guy can be relevant is if he's put together with Taz, who at least knows how to talk. Will Hobbs, I don't think he said one word, right? This guy is a rookie. This guy has Ezekiel Jackson or Vladimir Kozlov written all over him. I don't see anything big happening in this guy's future, you know? He's going to be a jobber in a few years, I'm sure. I mean, unless WWE signs him, which I'm sure is what he wants. But good for him. He's getting a spot. Brian Cage comes in, hugs him after he hits, I don't know if he hit Darby Allin or Cody, right? But it was ridiculous because Darby Allin is like a tiny guy, and Cody's a tiny guy, and Will Hobbs could probably beat the shit out of both of them in real life, just 2-on-1, you know what I mean? And so could Brian Cage. Brian Cage could probably beat up everyone in the ring in that segment at the same time if he wanted to. But yeah, that's what happened. Nothing really, to write home about. Like, it wasn't anything exciting. It wasn't anything great. It wasn't complete shit, I guess, but I mean, like, I expect some more out of this, motherfucker. I expect some more. I'm looking forward to Survivor Series a little bit, you know what I mean? So there you have it. That's what happened on, what's it called? On AEW this week. Notable things. Oh, another thing. I almost forgot about this. Another thing. They had, like, this thing where the Inner Circle goes out to Vegas, and it's just showing them bonding, right? This has gone too far, right? When the Inner Circle started, it was supposed to be this team of serious dominating athletes, right? It was almost like an evolution, right? You had like Jericho is like the Triple H / Ric Flair. You had Hager, who's like the Batista. You had Sammy Guevara, who's the Orton, and you had a tag team. And now they have Wardlow, who's probably the best one out of all of them, and MJF, who completely sucks. I hate MJF. This guy's he's just garbage. I don't know why anyone likes him. Like, he has 3 moves, right? He's not great on the mic. He's just, you know what MJF is? He's the guy that's like not funny, but he's kind of like a shock jock, right? Except not funny, right? So his entire like promos are like, I'm better than you. You're a fat virgin. Ha 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 ha. You know what I mean? Like, it's like the equivalent of you going to hang out with your friends and someone says, hey man, your mom's fat. And it upsets you because he's talking about your mom, right? But it's like, there's nothing clever about it. You know what I mean? He didn't say anything clever or anything smart. He was like, oh, the fans are fat. Ha ha ha. Yeah, no shit, they're fat. They know they're fat. You know what I'm saying? We know they're fat. Everyone knows they're fat. Pointing out the obvious isn't clever, right? This is like on the level of suffering succotash. Actually, suffering succotash is a bit more clever because at least it's a reference to something. You know what I mean? So we need something better than MJF. I gotta say, motherfuckers. Where the hell's Matt Hardy, by the way? Where the hell are all these people like Brody Lee, all these other jabrones, you know? There's a lot of jabronness going on in AEW, right? And I look at the, like periodically on AEW, they'll say like, oh, this week on AEW Dark, it'll be like El Fantasma Loco versus like Pendecito, you know what I'm saying? It's like, who are these jabronis, nobodies? You know, I went to the AEW roster, I couldn't find any of them because they're not like signed to the company, they're just jobbers. They're like, oh, here's 3 jobbers you're gonna watch on YouTube. You know, the hell? Why would I want to watch that? Like, how's that gonna produce good wrestling? You know, why don't they just sign Warhorse while they're at it? You know what I mean? So this show I did not enjoy very much. It had some good moments. I mean, seeing Brian Cage is always good because I like the kid. You know what I'm saying? Ricky Starks is growing on me. I'm not gonna lie. There was, I think, only 1 women's match, which is good because NXT had about 5. You know, so and I don't care what anyone says. Women's wrestling isn't as good. They're not as good. The end, motherfuckers. Deal with it. So yeah, there you have it. I mean, nothing really special. What else can we talk about? This video is a little short. I mean, not really that short, but yeah. I guess we'll end it here. I'll do another video on some other shit. Yeah, motherfuckers. See you later. Hater Gaming coming soon too. Catch.